was what sounded like hundreds of voices, high and low, fast and slow, all meshing together and all saying the same thing. Get out, get out, get out, get out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk About Strange. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week so far. We've had some really good stories come in. I really appreciate all the feedback you guys have given, all the comments and stuff. It's been really positive and it's been awesome. I appreciate that. I know that last story I had, boy, I got a little tongue-tied on some of that, but hopefully I can do a little better today. It's Friday. We're going into the weekend, so I want to at least get one set of stories into you. What I got here is from Rachel. This is the first time she gave us her name. She's also known as Old Soul of Mine. She'll probably come on there and comment to your comments or reply to your comments. So let's give her a lot of support. I really appreciate she sent us in. I got like four parts of her story here that she sent me. So I'm going to try to do this all in one shot for you. And we'll go in and just have a great weekend, okay? And then I'll see you guys again next week. I know I just had a lot going on, so it's been really difficult, and we're still trying to make a lot of preparations for the move and get everything lined up for that. So, but I'm going to still do my best to keep you guys up to date on everything going on, all right? So, without any further ado, let's get started on this. Hi, Steve. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you for the channel shout out for becoming a member. You're welcome. Thank you for becoming a channel member. We really appreciate it. Thank you again for helping everyone by giving us a safe environment to share our stories. It truly does mean so much. I will pick up today from where I left off in what I guess you could call part 2. I don't know if you will decide to share this part, but as it wasn't really paranormal or anything. It's more just covered all the crazy and messed up stuff that's happened over the first few years of my life, and the part that my mother thinks we carry a curse. Today I will begin, though, at a house we came not so affectionately to call the greenhouse, as it was painted a bright green color. See, now when you said greenhouse before, I thought you were talking about a literal greenhouse. We, my mom and I, had been living with my aunt, my mom's sister, and my 2 cousins. I will just call them Nat and Nate. Nate was a few years older than me, and I'm sorry, that's going to be tough. Nat was a few years older than me, and Nate was a few years or so younger than I was. We were all moving together into a place close to my aunt's job in, is it Cochran, Georgia? Cochran, Cochran, a place called Lithonia Glass. I believe it's called something else today, but the factory itself is still there, and so is the house. I actually found it on Google Maps, and we'll see if I can include a picture along with this email. Please blur out or remove the address. I don't want to, if I shared a pic, so that no one tries to go there or anything. All right, she thinks it's still occupied, so we don't want to do that. We all went together to look at the place on West Dyke Street, which was literally right down the road from her job. My mom had stopped working to stay home with us kids because of the issues that had been occurring with us in daycare. So being that close to work for my aunt to help cut the living costs, plus I found out later that this house in particular had been in the family from her ex-husband for years and had actually been used as a restaurant at some point. So I think they gave her a good deal on it. But also, it had been supposed to stay in their family, and some of them weren't at all happy about us moving into it, including the old woman who had been evicted. Though her eviction had nothing to do with us and happened before we even looked at the property, but I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. So we went to look at this place, and the realtor met us out front in a little porch and took us into walk through. Now, when you come into the front door and face the back of the house, you are standing in the living room. Directly in front of you is an open doorway leading into a tiny hallway with what would be my aunt's bedroom down to your right, and a huge kitchen to your left. Also from your original place in the living room, but To your right was a window in front of a wall and on that far right side wall. To the left from the living room was a door in the middle of the wall that led to what became my mom's room, which had a window in the front, outward facing the wall as well. Now, if you walk into the room and stood facing the back of the house with the front window behind you, you'd be looking at another door that led into the kitchen. To your left from there was a doorway with no door on it. That doorway led into a room with a small step down that would become us kids' room. That room had double closets, one on either side of the doorway to my mother's room, an outside door that faced out into the backyard, and a window on the left towards facing the wall, outward facing the wall, and a window on the front wall. These two windows would be where my bed would go, with my headboard up against the outer wall and the foot near the front window. I know this all seems like a lot of description, but it is all relevant to the experience we'd have while living there. Now, if you were standing in the kitchen, again facing the back of the house, there was a large pantry to your right near the small hallway leading into my aunt's room. To the left was a row of top and bottom cabinets from the wall to wall, with the sink and a small window in the middle that looked out towards the outside door of the room. The back door from the kitchen was straight out on the back wall leading into the screened-in porch where the laundry hookup was. The backyard itself wasn't all that big, and there was a set of train tracks no more than 50 feet out. Oh, but I bet that was loud. That were still in use at that time. The bathroom was also along the back wall of the kitchen, on the right by the pantry, but the opposite side from the small hallway, so that the pantry sat in between the two. I hope that makes sense. During this initial walkthrough, us kids were just, well, being kids, being a block home and empty, there was a huge echo in the place. Oh, no. And while the realtor was busy showing my mom around, we were loosely following from room to room. But at some point while we were there, still in what would be my mom's room, the realtor led our moms out the back door, and we were left in the house alone. We heard them go out, but didn't really think anything of it, and continued playing around listening to our echoes. I can just imagine, I had 3 daughters, and they would have been just yipping and yelling and hollering back and forth, laughing. My cousin Nat yelled hello, to which we heard hello, hello, hello. My little cousin Nate yelled out some gibberish, to which there was no corresponding reply. But then I yelled out hello, and instead of my own voice echoed back to me, there was this very deep and guttural voice that responded with "get out." And get out we did. Interesting. We all flew out of that house so fast and into the backyard straight to our moms. We tried to explain to them what had happened, but they just blew it off as kids' imagination and thought no more about it. The perfect location and seemingly the perfect house was all they could see. Continuation. I don't think we were in that house more than a few weeks before things started happening, and it didn't take long for them to progress once they did. The very first instance after moving in was one that my mom recounted to me, but even though it happened to my little cousin Nate and I honestly don't remember now. She said that he and I, came running into where she was folding clothes in the kitchen, telling her that we had just watched a pair of shoes walk across the floor in the living room, all by themselves. She said we seemed frightened and very serious about it, but that she thought it was just our imaginations getting the best of us. The first thing I do remember, is that us kids had just been tucked into bed. Mine was a little twin that sat where I explained before in a previous email, with the head of the front corner of the far wall and in between the window of the front and side wall there. You can actually see both those windows in the pictures I sent you. My cousin shared a full or maybe queen size bed that sat with the headboard against the back wall of the room near one of the closets and closer to the doorway leading into my mom's room. There was an old oak tree outside of the window on the side of the house, and the room was dark except for a little light coming in through the front window. either from the street light or possibly the moon. I'm not sure. But as we lay there trying to fall asleep, none of us talking about anything, all of a sudden the doorknob to the outside door of the far end of the back wall started jiggling violently as though someone was trying to get in. At the same time, it began to sound like the wind was blowing very hard through the oak tree outside. Isn't that just how every horror flick goes? The window in that wind was what sounded like hundreds of voices, high and low, fast and slow, all meshing together and all saying the same thing. Get out, get out, get out, get out. Then the old one rocking horse I had sat in the middle of the room started rocking, and a voice from above it, as far as we could tell, the same deep voice we had heard the day we viewed the house, again said, get out. All this took no more than seconds, I'm sure, but it felt like much longer as we were in the moment. After the deep, commanding voice sounded from within the room rang out through, we all jumped up and bolted for the room straight to the kitchen where our mothers were. My aunt was washing dishes and my mom folding clothes at the table when we stormed in, all trying to explain what had happened. As I'm sure you can imagine, it all took a minute to begin to understand us in such a state. And with rational adult mind, the first thing they thought of was a person or people trying to get in, not something supernatural. So my aunt, who had already been at the sink with the window that looked out towards the outer door to the room, went back to looking out of it. But knowing she hadn't seen anything, she then went out to the back door, thinking possibly if someone had been over there and she had noticed that when they heard us run screaming, they may have headed for the tracks that ran behind the house. However, after looking both directions and seeing no one there, hearing nothing, she came back inside and they both proceeded to check the room over and get us back into bed. They reassured us that no one was there and ignored us trying to explain that it hadn't been a person. After that, this would become a regular occurrence, happening at least a couple times a week. But until they began to experience things for themselves, they stopped taking us serious about it. Of the two of them, my mom was the first to start noticing things. She was watching Nate and I, trying to keep us playing quietly so we didn't wake up my aunt's boyfriend at the time, who was sleeping after work all night at the glass factory. We were playing in our room, but didn't lock the door from her room to whatever room she was in to be shut, understandably. And she was sitting in the kitchen table reading a paper. It had only been a few minutes since she last told us to keep it down when she looked up to see what looked like a man in jeans and a white shirt heading toward my aunt's room. Thinking we must have woke him and not wanting him to be upset, she went to tell him sorry about the noise and that if he wanted to lay back down, she would do better to keep us quiet. But when she knocked, there was no answer, so she opened the door slightly just to be sure he wasn't angry. He was still lying on the bed, covered up, fast asleep, and his clothes were on the floor near the foot of the bed. There was no way it could have been him, she thought, and began to wonder if there was something more about all the tales, of our tales. Of course, she told my aunt when she got home and from work, but my aunt just brushed it off as we were getting to her and messing with her head with all the stories. My mom continued to have more experiences after that, though, and it wasn't long before my aunt began as well. One day when they were both in the kitchen, my mom went to walk to my aunt's room, put away some clothes. When she passed the door to the living room, she noticed one of the rocking recliner chairs that sat in there, rocking violently back and forth. She tried to quietly get my aunt's attention to come and see it. It didn't take long to get from the table to the doorway, but by the time she'd gotten there, it already nearly stopped moving. It was like it was messing with them, but she did see it moving enough to notice that something must be up since none of us kids were even in the house at that point. These next things maybe not in exact order, but I will do my best. My aunt and her boyfriend were in bed one night when the silence was broken by what sounded like a small herd of horses running by the window. Her boyfriend went out to look, thinking that the neighbor's horses must have gotten out, but there was nothing, not even a hoof print, and it had rained recently, so there should have been something. They had to take the doorknob off the bathroom door because we would randomly get locked in. Even after the knob was gone, we had to keep a butter knife in there to pry the door open when it gets stuck. On one occasion, us kids found a pig farm down the tracks and wanted to show my mom. So after she finished the dishes, she locked up and we walked with us to see. But sadly, when we got there, all the pigs were gone and we headed back home for lunch. When we got there, she unlocked the door to go inside, and all the dishes she had just washed were laid and were in a strainer, were now scattered around the kitchen floor from one end to the other. Nothing was broken. Everything was simply set out, though someone had placed it there. Her first instinct was to blame us and think we were somehow playing a trick on her, until my cousin, Nat, pointed out that my mom had the key to and had been the last one out of the house, locking the door behind her. Also around this time, my mom started waking up with her bed shaking in the middle of the night, feeling like someone was in the room with her. Her and my aunt began looking for answers to the things happening around there, which sadly led to them spirit boards and tarot cards along with other things. My mom was also given a deaf black cat named Nicholas, who on multiple occasions would seem to be chasing something around the house. It would sound like it was screaming, "Get out," which was very creepy to say the least. A cat screaming, "Get out." Oh boy. Yeah, that is creepy. Wow. He was usually so nice and loved my mom very much, but several times he would seem to be possessed or something and would get this crazy look and then randomly attack her out of nowhere. She would have to throw him off from her, then he'd snap out of it and he'd be back like nothing ever happened, aside from being covered in scratches. We also found an old shed back in the woods behind our house, and my aunt's boyfriend brought some items back with him. After that, and the delving they were all doing, things got worse. I will leave it there for now, though, and pick up from where the last email, so this won't be too long. So, all right, so also please keep my family in prayers. My cousin Nat passed away today from complications after a recent heart transplant. I started this email yesterday before I found out she wasn't doing well, and I almost didn't even get back here to finish it. But I have been crying so much and so sad for her and all my family, especially her children. And I know I needed to do something to distract myself from the overwhelming sadness I was feeling. So I decided I would make sure I finished sharing our story and do so in her honor, as she was just as much haunted by the memories we all had in that place. Thank you so very much again, Steve, and have a good night, sir. Wow, I am so sorry to hear that. We're going to continue your story here. I just want to say, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's terrible. And you did the right thing to keep going and keep yourself busy and to do it in her honor. I mean, that's awesome. Very strong. Very proud of you. Okay. So, all right. So you did not finish this story yet. So there's more to come for that. So we'll look for that. And you sent me another challenge. It's a poem, The Princess and the Poor Man, and it's long, so I will do my best. But I am not a self-proclaimed poem reader. I will do my best, though. Thank you for sending it. I'm sure everybody will enjoy it and probably have a good laugh on my expense. So, all right, you ready? The Princess and the Poor Man. Long ago and far away in a land of great divide, a princess bid a poor man, "Please do come inside." She offered him a nice cool drink and a tasty slice of pie. He told her he would love to eat, but could not take a bite. She asked him, "Please do tell," hoping that he might. Then he told her of his travels and of the hardships he had to face. And now for him to be a beggar now would make him feel a disgrace. I hope that you can understand, he kindly said to her. She answered, there's some wood you could chop to repay me if you would prefer. He smiled and stood. She led the way. When I have finished, he said, I could unload the hay. We have someone to do that, said a man in a fancy suit. Frederick, spoke the princess, I can handle this, not Scoot. But, madame, he tried to say to her, though her words did not cut him short. If you do not approve, she said, then you should go and tell the court. Thank you, but you shouldn't have, the poor man stopped to say. Maybe I should go, but the princess begged, please stay. He had no clue what he should think, much less what he should do, but as he looked into her eyes, he knew her heart was true. So he stayed on for a while and kept her company every day. They laughed, they talked, and sometimes they danced the night away. Then one day a princess arrived. He wanted her to be his bride. The poor man thought his heart would stop. He thought he would surely die. But to both his and the princess' surprise, she said, I must decline. The prince said, how can you refuse my hand when I came offer you more than twice this land? I come to you from far away, and no is all you have to say. I demand to know the meaning of this. For who or what have I been dismissed? My heart does not belong to me. I am sorry, she said, but I hope you can see it already belongs to someone else. I cannot give it to you if I do not have it for myself. But the prince said, I do not understand. Aren't I the only prince in the land? If not to me, then whom do you give your hand? The prince stopped and thought for a moment about what she would say. The last thing that she wanted was to give her love away. If she spoke now of the poor man, the prince might take her away from that very night. There would be nothing that they could do. He would have everything right. Or if the poor man tried to stop him, it could surely cause a fight. So she asked the prince to be on his way, for the man she loved would be arriving any day. He comes from a land so far away, his way lighted by the brightness of star. His name I have been asked not to say, so as not to give his coming away. But the prince, being very bold, said, who is this prince? I must be told. There is no prince in love with me. To my heart a king does hold the key. A king, said the princess, seeming very surprised, but at least at the moment he was believing her lies. Then he said, I am inclined to say and meet this king that is on his way. I hope you do not mind at all. Now have your man show me down the hall. As the poor man led him down the hall, he tried very hard to say nothing at all. He wanted to tell him he had to leave, but he knew the prince would never believe that a princess could love a man like him. If he did, who knows what he might do to them. Now the princess thought long and hard about what she had to do, for she knew the prince would only leave if the lies she told were true. She thought, I have to somehow find a way to make a king in the next few days. But she kept her dealings to herself until she had made a plan of stealth. She had the poor man lying low so the prince would not see her true love go. She sent him with money into town to find and pay anyone around that would pretend to be the king's brigade. As to her castle, he made his way, and to pay someone to make some clothes for him to wear in his kingly pose. Now to her castle all along the way, he thought of all the things he would say about who he was and where he was from, he knew that the prince was not dumb. He was going to question everything that he could, so he had to know the answers and know them good. They arrived at the castle around mid-afternoon, and from the look on the prince's face, not a minute too soon. She ran out to meet him, her arms open wide, and as the princess approached, she stood at his side. She said, let me introduce Prince Adrian from the West. Yes, said the poor man, I have heard nothing but the best. Thank you. How flattering. And where are you from? I am King Thale, and you might know where I come from. The land that is mine lies to the south, far as the eye can see, and that land was once my father's land, and now belongs to me. A land so very colorful, a land in which all share. If you would like to, maybe one day you could come visit there. I would like that, said the prince, with a smug look on his face, as if to say, if given the chance, I would love to take your place. Why have I never heard of you? The prince asked as they walked inside. Well, my name, said the king, is something I preferred to hide. Curious, the prince said then. Do you mind me asking why? Before answering, the poor man sighed and looked the princess in the eyes. As he spoke, she felt it too and knew the words he had were true. He said to the prince in honest words, I have traveled the world, just like the birds. The one thing I have found when crossing the land is that you get more respect with just being a man. I have the greatest kingdom that this world has ever seen, but most people who know me do not know I am a king. I would rather be loved for the man that I am than to be worshipped as a king in anyone's land. He could tell from the look in the princess's eyes that he saw the truth and could not deny. The prince said goodbye and left that day. He gathered his men and was on his way. And the princess, she just could not believe that the man she loved was really a king. But as a bird began to sing a most beautiful song, she realized that her heart had known the truth all along. They decided to marry in the coming year in the spring, the loving princess and her poor man king. And they were joined together hand in hand and as the king and queen of all their land. The end. All right. Very good. Thank you for sharing that with us, Rachel. We really appreciate it. I think everybody can enjoy that. I think I got through it okay. You guys can let me know how I did. Boy, you guys are giving me so many twists and turns and challenges. I'll tell you what. First you're pulling my heartstrings, then you're having me reading poems. Boy, I don't know. All right. Anyway, so that's it for now. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope I can get this up before the end of the night. So that you guys can enjoy it over the weekend. And I will see you again really soon.